The media, the corporate press, the mainstream media just lies to us about everything. So when it's their guys burning down the cities and destroying Best Buys and Targets and Pep Boys and whatever else, those are the good guys and we should be tolerant of it. But when it's peaceful people, protesting for freedom, they're bad guys, they're right-wing maniacs, alt-right, et cetera, et cetera. Here's Mr. Potato Head himself, Brian Stelter, over on CNN.
I was just Googling that old quote from John Stuart Mill. He talked about your rights end where my nose begins. So your freedom sometimes infringes on others' freedom. And I think, Donnie, what you've seen in Canada is others are fearful of these protesters who are arguing for freedom, right? Because of some of the fringe rhetoric. Can we play the Daily Show clip for a second? This was you appearing on the Daily Show, and then Trevor Noah had a reaction.
And because you're not vaccinated, is there stuff you can't do in Canada now?
Yeah, well, basically, if you want to compare Canada to anything, it's like Hitler's Germany, and we're like the Jews, eh?
You see, this is why we shouldn't be banning books.
I can't say it better than Trevor Noah.
Yeah, look, and I mean, there is that's a really big part of what we're seeing there, and that just doesn't come from anywhere, right? Because that terrible historical inaccurate comparison, we've heard members of Congress here repeated, but it's actually, I think a lot of it is based in, there's been so much demonization of public health officials in this country and elsewhere,
right?
That a lot of these people believe that public health officials are there to harm and hurt them, not to help them.
Right. It's the bigger picture here is online radicalization of lots of different kinds turns into offline action. And whether there end up being convoys in the U.S. or not, we're already seeing the impacts of that in Canada. I feel like that's your beat, Donnie, is it's the online radicalization, but then you see what happens in real life.
I just said to my guys as we were playing this, it's truly incredible watching these people flip the story and how they reverse everything they say about one thing when it's their guys doing it versus how they say it when it's the other guys doing it. First off, I just want to say something very, very clearly here. I lost family members on both sides of the Holocaust, okay? I grew up around Holocaust survivors. I am well versed in what the Holocaust was and what the demonization of people is. Although the guy who was interviewed there, and by the way, great cherry picking on that Daily Show, and then they cherry pick that on the Daily Show. And then, of course, they throw that to CNN because they're all in on it together. I believe they're both owned by Viacom. It's just one big circle jerk in essence. Regardless of what the guy said, whether you think he said it in a butchered way or he shouldn't say it or something like that, the way something like the Holocaust starts is you otherize people, right? You keep otherizing them. You say, oh, you can't be part of the economy. You can't own a store. You can't do this. We're going to demonize you. You're diseased. So it is not a giant leap, okay? It really is not, and I don't care how much hate I get for this. It is not a giant leap after 2 years of demonizing certain people who wanted choice, medical choice, and choice used to be thought of as a good thing, to compare them to the Jews before the Holocaust. It's not a perfectly symmetrical situation, right? There aren't gas chambers in Canada yet, okay? So it's not perfect, but it is not deeply wrong. And the message behind what he said, was basically right. So Stelter laughs at it, and Trevor Noah, who has a series of we covered it last week, highly offensive jokes, if you get offended by jokes, towards Jews, who's now trying to destroy Joe Rogan. This is why, we shouldn't burn books. Okay, fine. But this is what they do. This is Brian Stelter, who, as the cities in America burned, he excused it. This is what they did on CNN. They constantly excused it. Don't worry, guys. When BLM is burning cities, when Antifa is burning cities, when cities are burning because there's an orange man in charge or something like that, then it's all good. It's all good.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
That ain't a riot, what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis. They are strictly principled anti-fascists, and they've taken a principled stand to stand against white supremacists and white nationalists wherever they may show up.
I argue to you tonight, all punches are not equal morally.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism, which is what they were there fighting. Listen, there's no organization is perfect. There was some violence.
Any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times.
But thank goodness for the looters, man.
And please, show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
I don't care that much about statues.
Shouldn't that be done by shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
You're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Do not get it twisted and think that, oh, this is something that has never happened before, and then this is so terrible, and where are we, and these savages and all of that. This is how this country was started.
People get mad, and people get sick of it. People are risking COVID to explain to this country that we're fed up.
Most of the major movements in American history have started at the grassroots level and at some point have turned into direct conflict with American government. So remember your history before you judge your present.
Thuggishness is thuggishness wherever it comes from politically, and we should be the first to call it out.
I disagree.
Dare I quote Chris Cuomo? But remember your history. Remember that history that I just showed you. Remember that those people excuse violence. Those people actually instigate violence.